Director of Public Interest Alberta. Thank you guys for coming today. I want to introduce a couple of other people in the room. Behind me is Sandra Nago, who is a researcher from the Edmonton Social Planning Council, doing a lot of work on this report. I also want to introduce Holly Abt, who has a camera right now, but is a placement student with us at Public Interest Alberta from the U of C's social work program, and did a ton of work on this report with Sandra to get us to where we are today. So to kind of introduce the report and give you some of the stats, I'm going to let Sandra take it away.
Great.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Roel. So the title of this year's report is called 1 in 6 is Too Many. And this is based off of the most recent report we have from Statistics Canada, tax filer data. It's the most complete record that we have of income in Canada across many different populations. And it's really nice because using that, we're able to slice the data according to variables such as age, gender, family type, visible minority status, Indigenous status. So I'm just going to share with you some key highlights and statistics from the report. So overall in Alberta, 1 in 6 children, or 17.7% of those aged 0 to 17 live under the poverty line as defined by the Census Family Low Income Measure After Tax threshold. Since 2006, that's actually increased by a shocking 23.4%. So the number of children living in poverty has gone up in the past 10, 12 years or so, which is quite shocking because Alberta is such a wealthy, prosperous province. When we take it down to different kinds of families, the lone parent families are actually quite at high risk for being impoverished. They're 3 times as likely as couple families to be living in poverty. That's 34.5% of single parent families as compared to only 10.6% of couple families, which is actually quite a marked difference. If you break it down further and look at gender, it becomes even a little bit more stark. When it comes to lone mothers, 34.5% of those women live in poverty, and so do their children. But when you look at lone fathers, it's only about 13.7%. So we are seeing some really shocking differences by gender and family type. Looking at visible minorities, 17% of visible minority children live in poverty as compared to only 10% of non-visible minority children. And finally, looking at Indigenous children, those living on reserve and in cities, it's 24.1%, but that number is actually likely to be much higher, and that's because data collection for on-reserve Indigenous populations actually tend to be underreported. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those statistics. So those are the main highlights from the report. There's lots more, and I'll leave it up to you to read, but thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sandra. I'm just going to offer a couple more comments and give you a bit of an idea of what this means for the political context that we're in. I'll start by saying that it is shameful that we continue to see more children every year living in poverty in this province. Governments at every level express their desire to see that number go down, but they're falling short. We as Albertans must let our governments know that continuing on this path is not an option we're willing to accept, and we must demand that all political parties make addressing poverty a priority in the election in 2019. In the report, we do make note of some significant positive actions that have happened, including the minimum wage increase to $15 per hour and the Alberta Child benefit, both of which are things that we have called for in previous iterations of this report. It's a report we've been doing annually for several years now. And without those changes, the problem of child poverty would be even worse. The government's recent announcement that it will index income support programs is also significant and is something that we called for in previous reports. And it will have a positive impact as well when it's implemented at the beginning of 2019, assuming that legislation passes in the legislature. The report points to many policy changes as solutions to the problem, some of which are happening and other ones that still need to happen. But perhaps the most significant one is a poverty reduction strategy. Alberta remains the only province in the country that doesn't have a poverty reduction strategy. either in place or in the process of being developed. We used to be one of 2 provinces. British Columbia was the other one, but they are currently in a process where they're actually passing legislation and embedding a poverty reduction strategy in legislation there. Our federal government also has one now. The federal government announced one over the summer, and Alberta's major municipalities, Calgary and Edmonton, but also several of the mid-sized municipalities in Alberta have their own poverty reduction strategies. So it's the province, when it comes to poverty reduction strategies, that is still missing in action and is the only level of government missing in action in this province. Legislating the plan to eliminate poverty with targets and other accountability measures would show that we are serious about addressing this problem. You see from the chart next to me that the problem is significant and it hasn't been getting better, it's been getting worse every year. So it's something that we strongly believe needs to be made a priority going forward. So those are our comments for now, and we're happy to take some questions now, and then we can split up for one-on-ones afterwards.
Let's do one-on-ones.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Everybody's good with that?
Sure. Picture you up there.
Sure.
Should I go to the way?
You know what, so I'll ask a few questions while they get some
Sure.
some footage. So, the footage, or sorry, the data goes only to 2016. How come, I mean, that's a long time, I guess. Why not include 2017?
So the issue is that there's a data lag, and there is such a tremendous amount of work that goes into each tax file that they can only release up to what they have.
Okay.
And so Statistics Canada has some very strong rules about the kinds of data that they release. And so they're never going to release 2017 until they think it's perfect.
Okay.
And that's just the nature of the data that's available. It is 2016 is the most recent best data we can get.
How many of these reports have been released from Public Interest Alberta?
This is our, I'll have to get back to you to say for sure, I believe it's the 8th or 9th.
Okay.
We've done several of them, and every year for quite a long time.
Yeah, if you can get that, just so
Sure.
for reference and
Yeah.
everything like that. So, okay.